Lovely. Noah, that was a beautiful intro. Thank you for playing that.
That's okay.
I love that film.
Mm-hmm.
And one of a kind.
You should know you asked me to play it.
I literally requested it.
Very original, yeah.
Anyway,
We're
welcome
also
back.
the only people who like that film. Nobody else likes that movie.
Yeah, nobody else has ever seen it.
No.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Calligram podcast.
Oh yeah, we're back. We've been
We're
away.
back. We've been away for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I hope your Christmases were nice. I hope your New Year's were nice.
It's March.
We've been away for a long time.
This will be out like in the middle of March.
Yeah. I hope your Triple J Hottest 100 parties were cool.
Yeah.
I guess.
What was the last holiday? Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it was.
Probably.
Yeah.
There you go.
Happy Valentine's Day.
We should probably say why we've been away for like. You know what we should probably do? We should probably introduce ourselves.
Yeah, right. Fuck's sake.
Hi,
God help you editing this shit, Noah.
Hi, I'm Noah Jeremetta. Mm-hmm. I say things on the internet sometimes.
Yeah.
On this podcast and nowhere else.
My name's Isaac, and sometimes I watch movies. Sometimes I talk about them also, and that's it.
We're just born to do this. I think we're just. We can't even fucking introduce ourselves.
Fuck's sake! I'm shaking off the rust.
I know we haven't done this.
Really bad. Yeah.
We haven't done this in. Well, okay. So
it's been like almost 6 months.
What happened? We shot a shot. We shot a short film.
Yeah.
Which took up the later half of the year.
Yeah.
Coupled with me getting a feature done and you getting a short done.
Mm-hmm. In time for Cannes Film Festival and a bunch of other major film festivals that we're now submitted to.
And now that that's all resolved,
yep,
we're finally back doing internet content.
Yeah, that's it. We had to take a bit of time off from podcasting to be a film company.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, we love the podcasting, but we're here to make movies. Obviously, it's good to get around and just watch the films that have been nominated and
sure. Well, award season's already like we're well
over.
in. Yeah.
The BAFTA have already happened.
Yeah,
the Screen Guild Awards have already happened.
Yeah.
You know, all the major festivals this time around have passed almost for this cycle, and so Noah and I saw a few films from this selection, and we just are really interested by them.
Yeah.
And we were keen to
These are like
chat about
some of our favorites of the year.
Yeah,
and
without a doubt.
even if they weren't nominated for a bunch of stuff, they still would be
They still
my
would be the
favorites of the
favourites,
year.
yeah.
But they also so happen to be nominated for a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's good that it's nice that it's worked out like that.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
Sometimes it doesn't.
People don't know what they're nominating, but it happens like that.
Yeah, sometimes wins. You can't leave that in.
I'll bleep it.
Yeah, okay.
I'll bleep it.
Yeah.
Last night I saw half of the movie, so I'm really keen to finally talk about some good movies.
That's good. Do we want to talk about the fact that the next 3 episodes are gonna be these 3 films?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sweet. Okay, so the 3 films that we think are just super bloody interesting and for sure worth having a chat about.
Probably my 3 favorites I've seen. I haven't seen everything yet.
Yeah, I'd probably say they're at least 3 in the top 5.
Sure.
And certainly like high up in that 5.
Yeah, my favorite films in here of the year, so that's easy.
For sure.
Yeah.
So those films are Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos.
Or as Emma Stone keeps saying in acceptance speeches, it's Yorgo. It's Yorgo. There's no S.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, that's the correct pronunciation.
Well, he's Greek, so of course they just...
Yorgo.
It's the same way that I
say...
say...
Oh, yeah, you're Greek as... Yeah.
Well, it's the same way that they say Michael Haneke. It's not, but
Mikhail.
I keep saying Haneke, because if I don't say Haneke, if I say Mikhail Haneke, people will, Googling other things.
Yeah, gotcha. So Yorgos Lanthimos or Yorgo Lanthimos?
I have no idea what the last name is.
Fuck's sake. Poor Things.
It's a good movie. It's pretty good.
It's pretty... Yeah. I mean, it's
fucking
amazing.
phenomenal.
It's brilliant.
It's
fantastic. Yeah. As soon as I saw it when it came out, Boxing Day, and I saw it with my friend Calvin, and I said, "Well, holy shit! There's 5 days left in the year, and this is my favorite of the year. It's just snuck in, and it's better than everything else that I had seen up until that point.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we're also going to talk about Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest. It's been 10 years since he's put out a film, and holy shit, what a
well worth the
return to
wait.
form.
He can take as long as he well
Yeah,
pleases
right,
making
right.
movies. I don't care.
Yeah.
They're great. All of them are great. He's got a flawless filmography.
Yeah,
There's
I've only
nothing
ever seen
worse than great in his film. Everything is at least great. He's awesome.
I've only ever seen Under the Skin, and that's. I mean, I was really really scared for the first time in a long time watching that. So that was like
That's interesting
an
that you
achievement.
say that. I know we're not talking about that, but that was
Yeah.
the only. I didn't really get scared by movies anymore. I've just seen too much shit. But there was a scene in that movie where it was exactly where there was like genuine fear. I was like, oh, I haven't felt fear in ages.
I feel like
watching
I'm
a
in
movie.
danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a good one. If we ever do like podcast recommendations and things on this, we just end up talking about whatever we want to talk about that's old. I'll probably recommend Birth because
cool.
it's because people don't like it. A lot of people don't like
Yeah.
it, but I think it's up until Zone of Interest, I guess is better.
Yeah.
But up until the Zone of Interest came out, that was I think the best Glazer movie.
Yeah. Wow.
For me, I fucking love it. I think it's fantastic. But I understand that people don't like it and whatever.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I'm keen to. I mean, when we do that episode, we're gonna do Poor Things first. By the way, this is a Poor Things episode. You would have seen by the title.
Yep. And we'll also do the Zone of Interest.
We're also going to do the Zone of Interest.
And then Anatomy of a Fall. I don't know which order we'll do this. I'm tempted to say Zone of Interest last.
Maybe we release that last. Yeah.
Because it's not.
I'm gonna want to go and have a nap and cry after we talk about that.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah.
It's a real. It's not the most happy movie of the year. Definitely not. But yeah, so we'll do Poor Things and we'll do Anatomy of a Fall by Justine Triet. That's my best attempt. I'm sorry, Justine. Then we'll do the Zone of Interest.
Yep. Sounds good.
Easy.
All right, so Poor Things. Guys, if you haven't seen any films from Yorgo Lanthimos, and especially this one, we'll say this. Don't watch podcasts about films if you haven't seen the film. So here's your official spoiler warning.
Some people don't care about spoilers, and I don't understand. But yeah, we're going to spoil the whole thing. We're going to spoil this whole movie. We're not going to talk about any of the other movies.
And every movie that we're going to talk about, but this is the Poor Things episode.
And we won't spoil the other ones. But I will ask a quick question, which is this your favorite Yorgo? Do you think this is the best film he's made, or is it your favorite, or whatever?
It's... I really, really like The Lobster. And I think that's my favorite.
Okay.
I think I had the most visceral emotional reaction to that one.
Sure.
Especially the ending. Like, it did a lot to me.
Yeah.
This would be certainly in the top 3.
Okay.
It's there with Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Cool.
And then it's those two are maybe interchangeable. Yeah, The Lobster was my intro to Yorgo.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it hit the most. It was my first experience with his style.
Sure.
And I just love it. Yeah. But Poor Things is the amazing thing about Poor Things is this incredible career that Yorgo has had to release another film where you can even ask the question, is this the best one?
He's easily one of the best working writer directors. Well, he has a screenwriting partner. But in terms of somebody's filmography, you can point to and be like, yeah, I think he's sort of top 5 for me. Gotta be.
In the modern
currently
era.
Making movies.
100%. Yes. He's there with Denis.
Maybe.
You should see Dune 2 anyway.
I should.
It's much better than the first one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good. I liked Dune for the record. But it was... Whatever, we'll talk about it in June.
Yeah,
when we do the second part of June, we will start by talking about the first part of June.
Sounds good.
And I'll explain why it's...
Why wasn't your cup of tea?
Yeah.
Fair play. Yeah, it's like him, PTA. I mean, Glazer's there, of course.
Yeah, I think so. McQueen.
Yeah. Is this your favorite Yorgo?
This is probably my second favorite.
Yeah. To Killing for you.
Yeah, Sacred Deer I think is his best movie. But I think this is his most impressive movie in a way.
I agree.
I think this is to achieve this is ridiculous. This is one of the most developed worlds I've ever seen in a movie. This is up there with Brazil in terms of making me believe I'm somewhere that is
Doesn't exist.
to dream up this thing. I mean, it's based on a book, we
Yeah.
should say, so it's like not completely his invention, but the art style of this,
Yeah, it's
the-
totally him.
the art direction, the production design, and his production design are made, but like, and the costuming and all this stuff. This is one of the most amazing looking movies I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Period.
I agree.
End of story. It is stunning.
And
it's
then
fucking
coupled with how
fantastic.
it is shot.
Yeah, and how it's,
in addition to
of course
the-
it's
the
shot with like
insanely-
the craziest shit ever.
Yeah,
And the lens choice that's used and the editing of how they're cut together, it's brilliant. I'm lost for words at this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, from the first 5 minutes, I was like, this is like right up my alley. I love shit like this. This like fantasy world of like, but set in a serious tone with so much depth in it is like, I think it's one of the reasons I love Guillermo del Toro so much. But something like Pan's Labyrinth, which I hold as like one of the best, if not the best fantasy movie I've ever seen, using like a fairy tale to communicate really sincere things. And this has done this like near perfectly for me. I love this.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I'm with you. A really inventive approach to it too. Like
Yes.
in recent history, there's people use, rather than green screen, LED panels.
Yep.
And there's some incorporation of that.
Yep.
With a lot of the skies.
Yep. Most of the exteriors and interiors, like 90% of them of
Yeah.
the film, were built in a giant soundstage.
Yeah.
Apart from the dance sequence, that hall.
Yeah.
That's on location. But Lisbon is actually in a soundstage. I'll put photos up, but it's
Yeah.
actually in a soundstage, built the whole thing. It's crazy.
It's unreal. Yeah.
The pro designer says it was something like a theme park or something like that. Like they built like a theme park that you could just walk through. It's like when Emma Stone's walking through Lisbon, she's just walking through the set.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if you want to talk about being an actor on the set,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like in terms of, okay, let's mentally put myself into the scene.
Sure.
You're not poor old Ian McKellen on the set of The Hobbit trying to act to a tennis ball
Yeah, right.
and breaking down on set saying,
Yep.
this is not what I made movies for.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're looking at these LED skies. The skies are beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, it's
It looks like swirling paint.
Yeah.
And it just plays into the insanity of the film.
yeah.
Like,
Yorgo said he wanted to, and it was like a collective decision that he told the production team that the idea was that the film was from Bella Baxter's point of view.
yeah.
So that's why it looks like that, reflecting like a child's view of the world and how everything is this way and that way. And of course, it moves to color, which
Yeah.
is something that everybody seems to have
Online.
obviously pointed out, thinking that it's like that's not obvious.
It's
as hell.
actually the first film ever to use black and
White
white.
and then move to color to show an enlightenment of a character.
Unreal.
The funny thing about it though is he sprung it on the production team apparently on set. Like they did the whole thing. He's like, yeah, the first 30 minutes is black and white, and they were like,
That production designer's like,
it's okay. We go into color later, so
yeah,
we still see all
in
the
the
color.
same setting
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
in the
Yeah,
same setting.
in God's house.
But it would have just been
Yeah.
a funny thing to be like, okay, we're black and white film stock for this bit. It's like, okay.
That's crazy.
So, according to some production designers, Yorgos sent them a Hieronymus Bosch painting, who, if you don't know,
No.
amazing artist, one of the most famous surrealists, and there's a few triptychs by him that are super famous, like Garden of Earthly Delights triptych, all that sort of shit. Anyhow, he's a great, amazing painter who dreamed up all these crazy monsters and things, and apparently he sent them a painting, or what I probably think is like a snippet of a painting of some people flying on fishes, like with flying fishes and little people on top of the fishes.
Oh yeah, they literally
Yeah.
do that
And there's a transitional scene
when they show the chapter.
where
Yeah.
Bella's on the fish heading to, I think it's for Lisbon.
Yeah.
Like that's straight just borrowed from Bosch.
Yeah, those transitional shots are some of the best
They're
images
amazing shots, yeah.
ever put to film.
Yeah.
And I really don't feel dramatic at all saying
No,
that.
they're awesome.
They're
Yeah, the
fucking
slow-mo,
believable.
the everything, the movement of them is great. It moves like this movie's 2 hours, 20 minutes and
Yeah.
feels like about 30 minutes.
Yeah,
It's just...
and I'll say
Yeah.
this, like, we're going to review the zone of interest.
Yeah.
The zone of interest is almost 40 minutes shorter. It's 30 minutes shorter.
Yeah.
It's an hour 46.
Right,
And
yeah.
it felt like 40 minutes longer
Yeah.
than Poor Things. And
Yeah.
that's not at all to say that the zone of interest is slow.
No.
But in terms of giving you a certain experience,
Sure.
the manipulation of time in both of those is so masterful that
True.
I honestly felt like the zone of interest was way longer than it was.
Yeah, that's fair.
I got out. Angus and I saw a 6 p.m. session, and I got out, and it was 8 p.m.
Sure.
And we didn't have to pay for parking, which was good news because
there you
we
go.
were in 2 hours.
And you
Anyway,
were like, oh, that was that quick?
time is interesting.
Sure. Yeah. There was some...
I'm gobsmacked by this.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain that.
I'll just point out like technical things first, and then go into like what I feel like is the film's getting at. But
sweet.
So there was.
I got to put some words in my mouth.
That's okay. The costume designers on this film apparently said, looking back at the work that they had done, that there was this artist called Albert Rabida. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Futurist, and he drew all these amazing dresses of like women wearing dresses and cities that are definitely borrowed, and I think he said that the color palettes were borrowed from them as well. I'll put some paintings up. It reminded me of like BioShock, which I felt bad for the fact that it reminded me of BioShock after I heard a dude in a Q&A with the audience say that you're using like steampunk aesthetics to these the production designer and costume designer, and they said, ugh, we hate steampunk or whatever.
Replace some of the more specific historical context leading up to the First World War with steampunk aesthetics. Thank you very much.
What was the last?
Steampunk.
Steampunk aesthetics. Ugh.
We don't like steampunk.
They didn't like that.
Can someone get rid of that guy?
And I think, but you know, I'm glad they said that, because I think it's not steampunk. It isn't. It's not like gold and rusty and whatnot. It's super colorful. And they said a lot of the colors that they picked intentionally, they were trying to pick things that like reminded them of bodily fluids, and that all of the colors were supposed to be like sort of a bit grotesque.
We took a lot of inspiration for the color from anatomical drawings and bodily fluids, the yucky ones and the beautiful ones, sort of pinks and saturated reds and lilac, sort of tripe colors. We always tried to relate it to something a bit revolting.
And it's true, like they're really intense reds or like a sort of like sickly yellow, and those colors are also present in Rabida's paintings.
Yeah.
And they're sort of like white, and then he'll use a pretty bold color here and there. And they've obviously like expanded this. Yeah, someone said that Yorgo gave a costume designer a single reference of inflatable trousers or something and said to go off that, which I thought was funny because Bella Baxter's not really wearing trousers or any sort of bottoms for like majority of the movie. She's like in underwear for a lot of it. But yeah, I thought that was cool. I looked at the paintings and was like, oh, yeah, of course. Like it makes total sense as a reference. Of course they pulled from that.
I think that's one thing that's really, really impressive about this is Yorgo is, I feel like he's becoming very influential in the modern film scene.
Yeah, it's taken a minute. I can't believe this is like the first Yorgo people have seen.
Yeah, and people are kind of not catching up to Yorgo, but they're, you know, I'm seing films with like wider lenses more often.
They are catching up to Yorgo.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, because they're seeing it. And then Yorgo, I love and admire him because he's like, you know, obviously this is not a conscious decision. I'm sure that he doesn't care what the landscape is. Yorgo wants to make a Yorgo movie.
Yep.
But I like the idea that it's like, oh, you guys are catching up. It's like, okay, I'm going to take my visual style and I'm just going to expand it by like 300% for this poor films thing and look at all these new influences.
Yeah.
And this is like going to be almost you cannot imitate it.
Yeah. Well, he's spoken a lot about wanting, when he does these period dramas, because The Favourite obviously exists.
Yeah.
And that he wanted to use more sort of modern references or period pieces that have done a more modernistic look at period pieces. And so The Favourite is this like sort of minimalist look. All the costumes are in black and white, and they're all basic materials, and there's not much embellishment.
Strangely, the costumes don't have a great deal of detail. Due to sort of financial and time restrictions, I decided to strip all that back. And also sort of for the style of the film. So what the costumes are really, basically they're historically correct for the cut. Then, as Yorgos mentioned before, I used contemporary fabrics and stripped away all the decoration and sort of made it the bare bones.
Well, I think firstly, we wanted to look at period films that have done things differently. And one of the few that stood out was Peter Greenaway's The Draftsman's Contract. Yeah. Very stylized film, very bold. Their costumes were also made by very plain materials. I think they used mostly cotton materials, which was much plainer than what they would actually be, and they also, I think, limited the color palette quite a bit. You know, something very different was Bergman's Cries and Whispers. Also, their costumes are black and white, but of course in a very bright red room.
And like, this was the other side of everything, where it was just like, now we're going to go absolutely maximalist and do a period piece that looks nothing like any period piece. Like, the colors aren't accurate. Lisbon doesn't look like that. It's a real place. It looks nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like,
And with Lisbon, we did away with the blue. Portugal's got a lot of tiles that are blue. We changed those to green, and we
Berto Robida.
yeah, Alberto Robida. Looking back at his work recently, it's sort of like hugely influential on the color palette of Lisbon and stuff, right?
in doing these movies that are supposed to be like period accurate, he just has so much freedom. He feels so much freedom and like expression to just do it. And his visual taste and artistic taste and the taste of his production team is so great and so high. Everything is perfect. If somebody can tell me where I can buy Bella Baxter's sunglasses, let me know. But like every single thing that is in this film, apparently like Emma was talking about like, they would walk around the set and you could open the drawers and there would be like all this weird cutlery in there that no one ever got to see. And like they detailed it to a ridiculous degree, which is just immense. I don't think there's many film sets that I would want to, because I think sometimes like, oh shit, I wish I was on that set in the 1960s just to be on the set and see how they did everything. This is one of those. It's like, I wish that this was like taken from the set, put in a theme park, and people were allowed to walk around in it and made an attraction. I would pay anything to be there.
To go.
Oh, it was awesome. I love it. I want to talk about practical effects.
Yeah.
Defoe's mask is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
It's flawless. I love that there's...
Have you seen the painting that they borrowed from?
No, I haven't seen the painting.
I'm going to put a picture up here.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they took that and then made a prosthetic. It looks like it shouldn't be possible to do and have it look not natural, but believable, that if someone's, been tested on and mutilated as a child, like this might be what their face looks like.
Right.
It's unreal. Anyway.
Yeah, the scars on the face were so unique because it was like precise, like straight scars on some sides and crooked ones on others, and it gave this really unique look to... I've never seen a mask like that.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
They like extended his chin on one side.
Yeah. He's completely expert. It was brilliant. Apparently Defoe loved performing in it too. He was like, thought it was really great to wear it. Bella's brain surgery scene and the brain surgery scene. This is spoilers. The brain at the end where they turn the dude into a goat. When they take the skull off and you see it looks fantastic. It's so believable and like gross and awesome. It looks fucking great. I love when we get into that studio and there's that just pig hanging from the wall up the back, and it's just like, because you see all these animals and they're super fun, like the pig with the wings and the duck dog and all that sort of stuff. It's like, this is great, fun stuff. And then you get in there and there's a pig hanging and it's like, it's grotesque is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. I love it. And the fact that Bella's hair keeps growing throughout the film is just awesome. Just love that as a detail. It's like, of course, well, she's not cutting her hair, right?
Yeah.
She's been away for a while and it would grow faster because she's developing faster or something like that. It like links up. It's just nice and a great detail.
It's cool. It really informs the fact that she's just wild. She's like a massive, probably the central like motor for her character is that the film seems to be a look into what someone would be like if they were unconcerned with society's
she
perception.
has no shame. She's free.
She has a very organic, unfiltered way of learning about how things work. And, if she's growing her hair out and, walking a certain way and talking a certain way, it's all, it's all indicative of that.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. And people can look at her and know after 2 seconds that this is like a different person.
Yeah.
Which is wild because it's, everyone kind of seems, you realize that everyone kind of talks the same to a degree, and then you hear Bella Baxter and you're like, wow, I wonder what the circumstances are for you to like sound like this.
Sure.
Like this is really interesting.
Yeah. And they would still know, and the other thing that's interesting to think about the fact that this is Bella's point of view. So like, what's she really wearing when she's going outside, and how are people treating her because of that, and that sort of a thing. In her view, everything looks fantastical, and so she views everybody as sort of like, she's completely non-judgmental of anybody. But if they viewed her, she's outside not wearing any pants, they might be treating her a certain way or avoiding her a certain way, and she does speak completely differently. We should talk about the language a bit because this is...
Yeah, I want to talk about the Emma Stone performance.
Oh, the performance, okay.
Yeah, I guess probably the biggest thing about the performance that really just impresses the hell out of me, and it makes me wonder how she pulled it off. And she's honestly thrown herself up there into the realm of Kate Blanchett and Jessie Buckley in terms of these are the best performances from an actor this decade.
Yeah, probably.
This is gonna be one of those
things.
ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Without a shred of a doubt.
Yeah.
And this is also credit to the screenwriter.
Yeah.
And obviously the direction.
Yeah.
But Bella's development is so intricate in its portrayal on screen.
Yeah.
There's so many subtleties in how she hears a word, learns how to pronounce it,
Yep.
gets better.
Yep.
She can round out her sentences better. She's not more polite per se, but she's more understanding
Sure.
to people's reactions.
Yep.
And then I thought, oh, okay. When you're shooting a film, I was like, oh yeah, films don't get shot in order. So Emma Stone is rocking up to set one
Yeah.
day, looking at the timeline of Bella's development
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being like, I'm
They pinpointed it.
exactly here.
Yeah.
And then she could come back and I'm like, okay, I'm exactly here in the
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
And when you watch it in chronological order on screen,
Makes sense.
it was perfect.
Yep.
And it was beyond like making sense. It was like,
Yeah.
you could not have done this better.
Yep.
And
Agree.
your focus on the day must have been unfreaking believable. So, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yorgo and Bella said that and Emma said that
Yeah.
they were going to develop like a timeline for her development, and that they did like 10 stages or 15 stages. And they said, well, this is fun. We're not doing this. So they did 5 stages of like, this is how she acts in stage 1, stage 2, stage whatever. And they shot 1 and 5 first. So all the mansion shit was done first. And then she had to do 2, 3, 4 later in a different set because they had the mansion for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So they did all of the beginning and the end.
Well, that's cool.
First.
She knows where she ends up.
Right.
That would have really helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, I can't go beyond here
True.
and then come back to it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that impressed me the most about it, I mean, her delivery is great and her articulation is great. The whole movie, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But the physicality of when she's like playing a toddler is insanely accurate.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's like she's I don't know how much research she did or like who knows. Maybe she's got a kid and she like observed her kid walk around and stuff. It's insanely good. If you've had to give like toddler movements to an adult, that's how they would act.
Yeah.
And you know looking
She's
at
got
it.
like wooden legs.
Yeah.
Almost.
And you could Defoe doesn't explain the scenario of him putting a brain into her until we're like 25 minutes in. But watching her act, it's not just like someone who has trouble walking or someone who has whatever. It's clearly like she's a baby.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. And it's just from her physicality alone. If I saw nothing else and only how she moved, I'd be like, yeah, she's like playing a 3-year-old right now.
Yeah.
It's
It's
amazing.
perfectly done. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
unreal. And like how she there's that scene where Willem Dafoe as God is not as God.
As God.
His character's name is God.
Well, he's God.
He's also God.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I
Yeah.
like that works out like that. Because
Yeah.
his name's actually Godwin in the
Yeah.
script, but he just gets called God. There you go. He's creating,
It's
he's
her
putting a
world. It's
goose's
her
head
point
on
of
a
view.
dog.
If she's
He's
calling
playing
him
God.
God,
Yeah.
he's God.
100%. He's reading her a story and she's cuddling up to him.
Yeah.
And it's so childlike.
Yeah.
It's exactly how kids do.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because I'm pretty sure that Emma Stone is taller than Willem Dafoe.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know how she made herself look so small on
Yeah,
the
well,
bed,
she
just
would have had to figure it
by
out.
body language.
Yeah.
Like, it's perfect. She deserves all the praise in the world for
She's
this.
already won like everything, hasn't she?
I hope she wins Best Actress.
Yeah.
I think Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon was fantastic.
Okay. You think she'd probably win it?
It's kind of between those two.
I'd like to see her or Sandra win.
Yeah.
That's me,
Oh,
personally.
yeah, she's nominated for
Yep.
Anatomy.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. I think
Either of those I'd be happy with a win.
Yeah. I think I doubt Sandra's gonna win. I would love for her to win.
She did Jimmy Kimmel. I was shocked. Okay,
Yeah.
we're on poor things, but like,
Yeah. Sorry.
I was shocked
Hold
that she
on,
was
hold
like in the public eye and like doing her stuff. 'Cause
Yeah, it's good.
People don't give a shit normally about foreign
Yeah.
films or foreign actors or any of it. They're just like they're banished to a foreign category. It's like those people don't count
Yeah.
type thing.
It took a woman to be in 2 Best Picture nominated films
For anybody to
people
care
to give a shit
about foreign
finally.
movies.
Yeah, not just one.
Yeah.
And the lead in
Yeah.
both, arguably.
Yeah,
supporting
in zone,
Yeah.
but close to
Close to lead.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Emma Stone.
Yeah.
I hope she wins. I hope they somehow give her Best Actress for next year as well. You know, like it's one of those performances. It's like you should get 2 Oscars for this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh man, great performances in the film. I want to talk about Mark Ruffalo because holy shit.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo, and I was clearly mistaken doing this, and I clearly just haven't watched enough Mark Ruffalo films. But unfortunately, in the public zeitgeist, he's played the Hulk now 5 to 10 times.
Yeah.
So people seeing him do the one role so many times, and I'm one of these people, thinks that he can only do a couple things
Sure.
because he's limited.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a lot of films from Mark Ruffalo outside of the Hulk performances,
Right.
which is
And
a mistake on my part.
Those Marvel movies are sort of inherently limiting.
Yeah.
Because unless it's your movie, you have 2 scenes where you get to say something.
Yeah.
And you gotta establish who you are without disrupting the whole piece.
Yeah.
And it's not really
and
about
not just
you.
that film, but all the films around it, because the
Yeah.
MCU's got the big studio model. Blah, blah,
I haven't seen many of his performances either. I saw a movie called You Can Count on Me last year at some point when I was going through like 2000s movies that are basically completely dependent on screenplay and acting, and
Right.
they are shot like TV dramas. I hope that's not mean to anybody who made those movies. They're well directed, but they're just the personality.
Maybe they
of the-
just didn't get the funding. Maybe that's
It could
something
be.
we can
Yeah,
say.
yeah. But it's like Wagyu beef with nothing on the beef. It's like there's no embellishment. There's no
Yeah.
creative choice about anything. It's just really high quality steak.
Yeah.
With nothing else on it.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie. And Mark Ruffalo's in it, obviously, and he delivers a really great performance. That's the first time I saw him in a movie where I was like, oh, he's really good.
really-
Why is
yeah.
nobody using him?
Because I thought he was one-dimensional, and I'm realizing that
because
I've
he's in-
just seen him as the Hulk
he's just in
and
the
in
Hulk.
Spotlight.
Yeah, he's good in
And
that
that's
one
it.
scene.
I
in
mean,
Spotlight.
he is very good in Spotlight.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from him, but I've just seen him not do many things.
Yeah, no, same here.
And then I saw him in this.
This is his best performance.
For sure.
No,
It's not even close.
No, it's
not even close.
No.
And he does something so different. His elocution
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah.
His body language is completely different to everything else I've ever seen.
Yep.
Some actors get drawn into playing them a lot of the time. I'm not going to go now and name them because that's mean. But you just had an actor come to mind and you know who it is. Or a few.
It's true.
There you go.
Yeah.
He is so fucking funny in it.
He's hilarious.
And pathetic.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of like, obviously a big theme in the film is like male projection and like being a dominant man to try and, command a wife as your, like someone that you control, not
Bella
as a independent person.
Bella brings it up. She literally says like the guy who's
the
she's
awful
marrying.
guy at the end.
No, the guy she's marrying.
Yeah.
She says like, I've been a whore, you understand, and like also, and she's like, does that disrupt men's wanting for ownership or need for ownership or something like that? And it's that controlling ownership thing
very well
that
said.
that really, as soon as Ruffalo starts to realize that
he can't control her.
she's thinking for herself, he starts to get really insecure.
He becomes completely pathetic.
Yeah.
Very quick.
Well, he's been pathetic. It just starts to come out like a toddler.
Yeah.
Ironically, he becomes the toddler, and there's a switch in the dynamic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Well,
yeah, because he's throwing like
he's throwing
tantrums
tantrums.
and stuff. Yeah.
He's straight up throwing. He's just being annoying.
Yeah.
He's just being really annoying.
And thank you, Yorgo, because it's like if you want to look at how fragile and stupid that mindset is.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo has absolutely nailed it. It's so entertaining. It's so funny.
I heard himself compare that character to Andrew Tate in an interview, and everybody laughed.
I think that was on it might have been for Variety.
It could have been.
He was like, he said something along, well, we can just cut the clip in here maybe.
He's controlling. He sees himself as a libertine. He believes in free love unless, of course, it's the woman who wants to have free love. Classic sort of misogynistic, sexually dominating man from the turn of the century, even to today. Andrew Tate comes to mind.
But he said something along the lines of like, oh yeah, I felt that this was actually urgent in a world full of Andrew Tates at the moment.
Oh, did he say that?
And I was like,
there you go.
yeah, man.
I heard him at another like Q&A for a film festival say it, and he like danced around, but he didn't name Andrew Tate. He did everything but name him.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then another interview, I heard him say it, and I was like, well, you just
Yeah, and it's like there you
obviously he
go.
didn't give a shit about
Yeah,
just
the
fuck
cat's-
this guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything about Duncan is kind of some manufactured idea of what he thinks a man should be. He sees himself as this libertarian, but what he really is just a super conventional, insecure, vulnerable baby man. Once he finally, I think, really is confronted with love, it all just falls apart. All of this masculine macho stuff is really just covering the most terrified, broken, hungry, desperate, and sad person. Sound familiar? Who? Never mind.
The performance is
I'm trying to think of
extraordinary.
moments, and they're like racing through my head. There's like so many moments that are so funny.
Oh, and his whole unleashing of who he is, because he's just like this sort of slimy creep at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then once he's like gets in the straitjacket and like shows up to the wedding and
Yeah.
has totally he's off his
Yeah,
rocker. And
he's
you fucking
hiding
believe it.
behind the ex-husband at the wedding.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And Ruffalo's like
Yeah.
hiding behind.
Yeah.
It's so.
Best cinematic representation of Andrew Tate ever seen.
Oh,
Just like cowering behind somebody else.
That's real
He'd
good.
say a bunch of bullshit. Yeah.
Oh man, I love. I feel like there was a bit of a callback to A Streetcar Named Desire. Do
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
When
Stella. I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When she's up on the balcony.
Yep.
And he cut the clip in here.
Yep.
He goes, Bella.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. You're totally right.
I was like, that's just yeah. What a good place to
Yeah.
put that in.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like
And sort of similar characters in a way.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like to have an intertextual reference.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, I thought we would leave that to parody movies.
Sure.
And that would be the end of that.
Sure.
But it's so tasteful.
It
and
is,
to
yeah.
see one in this film, I was really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Because like even the framing, I think, is like similar. Like they got the high angle.
Yeah, kind of.
And he's kind of like, he's like with the hands
Yeah,
doing
it's a bit
it.
of a mirror of it. I can put it up.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like one way or the other. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like a mid as well. Anyway, he has this one line that I just think is so... Me and Calvin and I just kept saying it back to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Just for weeks afterwards because we thought it was great. She was like, it's the first day that they're having sex with each other. They've just arrived in Lisbon, I think. And she goes, another or something. And he says, you've just been fucked thrice by the best, darling.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines of, and then he takes a drag from his cigarette.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in a movie.
Yeah. That scene begins with one of my favorite music cues I've ever heard in a movie.
Yeah.
Just
I
say
can't
that right
remember
now.
it.
Oh,
What's-
it's just
what's
when
the
they
go?
cut
Yeah.
to the sex scene. She's like, it cuts from Defoe and I forget this actor's name and the character's name as well. The guy
Yeah.
she's marrying. They're talking about, well, I hope she'll be okay wherever she goes, and it cuts straight to the sex scene with this like amazing like one of my favorite scores of the year, and the cut into
Oh,
that
yeah.
is like just.
Isn't it like...
It's great.
It's really high
The music
energy.
is fantastic, and the juxtaposition.
We're
of it's brilliant.
immediately on like a mid, like writing Ruffalo's character.
Yeah, it's like a zoom into her like a crop or a zoom or whatever it is. There's a lot of those like Barry Lyndon-esque like things, but yeah, it's great. His performance is amazing.
Yeah.
He also told Yorgo he couldn't do the role. I'm sure you know that. But
Yeah.
he said I can't do this. I don't. You've got the wrong guy. And Yorgo apparently just laughed and said, haha, you're the one. And then he had to deal with that.
How did Yorgo...
No.
I wonder what he's seen, because he's obviously seen. I am not up to speed on Mark Ruffalo apparently. Like,
Well,
I wonder what he's seen.
Somebody asked him that at a Q&A, and he was just like, apparently it was like him and Emma's joint idea. Because she
get
was a producer
Ruffalo.
on it. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And then he said, I didn't really do anything to him. We just started rehearsing, and he just did that, and that was that. And Defoe apparently pranked him on set, apparently.
I was really terrified. I didn't know how to do it, and thank God we had the rehearsal process where I could find it and play it. He did.
He was there from day one. He made me laugh from day one.
Then even in the middle of rehearsal, I was like, "Do you want to send me home, Yorgos? I can't get the accent." You know?
The joke was Oscar Isaac was working
yeah.
in the other part of the studio, and he kept on saying, I know he's here to replace me. I know he's here to replace me. It was
he put him up to it. He comes into rehearsal, and Oscar's like, "Hey, man, good job, but it's time to go home."
part of the bonding process.
It was.
But I don't want anybody else to do this. I think
No,
Mark Ruffalo
Mark
is
Ruffalo.
somehow the weirdest, best choice. I think honestly, if like an actor had come in who I'd previously seen do something this strange,
Yeah.
had come in to play it, it would become less memorable because it would be an actor who has done similar things, and you would see like a comparison between like if Joaquin Phoenix came in and did it, it would be like Joaquin Phoenix's list of crazy roles that he's done, and then this is an additional, and you'd be like, oh, that's just like what he did in this film. So putting Mark Ruffalo in a completely new context has opened up all this stuff that we never knew he could do for the first time. We've never seen it before. And because of that, it stands out so much, and you can't compare his performance in this film to any other film that he's done,
very
or at least
true.
that I know. So you can't be like, oh, he's pulling from that role and he did that thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it becomes like this solely unique performance from him.
Yeah.
He's awesome. I
It
love him.
feels like something totally new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very fresh.
Yeah.
Oh, Margaret Qualley
I love her.
deserves some
Oh, she's
some
the best.
praise too.
Somebody put her in more movies. Every time she shows up in a movie, I'm so happy. She's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I love her like little addition at the end there. It's so small. She's in the next one that they've already shot and they're
Oh,
editing.
great. Cool.
So that'll be great.
She's brilliant.
Yeah.
I really appreciate her as well, seeing such a unique blueprint for that kind of character right in front of her
Yeah.
in Emma. And obviously they're having developmental issues with Margaret's character, which is so funny, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah.
drawing on the walls
Yeah.
and shit, and she can't catch a ball. Like
Yeah.
her hand-eye coordination
It's
is bad.
great.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
But even with that being the case, to do something that's like so different to Emma as well is really cool.
Yeah.
And it really drives that point home that it's like, oh, I know that God has just performed this miracle twice, but like Bella is actually one of a kind.
Yes.
Like we're not gonna have another
No.
Bella Baxter.
No.
You can't just churn these out.
Yeah.
So absolute credit to that, because that's to be on the same set and see Emma's performance and then be like, that is like one
Yeah.
in a million, but I'm gonna do my version.
Yeah. And she does a great job.
She does an
She's
incredible
fantastic.
job.
Yep.
Just absolute credit for that.
Yep.
Because it would be so, well, apparently not to her, but you know, if you're a young actress,
Sure.
intimidating.
And intimidating too, but not only because you have to like essentially you're doing something that's not a mimicry, but somebody else has already done it, and they're the lead, and they're also a producer,
and they're crushing.
and they're crushing it, and they've been
Yeah.
on the project for how many years? So to come in and do it,
they've also already done a project with Yorgo before.
two of them, yeah.
Two, there you go. And they did a photo shoot. Have you seen that photo shoot?
I've not
with
seen the
Emma?
photo shoot.
Okay, we'll
Okay.
cut in some photos
Okay,
here.
cool.
They did, Yorgo and Emma did a photo shoot where Emma is like a glitzy mum from the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like smoking heaps of cigarettes and she has like 1 million dogs in her house. And she's like a housewife from the 70s with dogs. And they just wanted to do a photo shoot together. And you should see these
I'll look that
photos.
up.
They're
That
really,
sounds good.
they're really good. They're clearly having a shitload of fun.
Right.
Yeah, respect to Margaret Qualley.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's in an A24 film.
The new one of the Coens film.
Yeah. Is it Ethan?
It might be. I think it is because Joel did Macbeth and Ethan did.
That's it. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. So here's
Yeah.
the thing to bring up.
Cool.
Because all I hear is ever-ending praise about this film, and it's pretty much all I have as well. I've seen this 1.5 times. I watched the second half to prep to do this.
Yeah.
And that was a bad decision because I couldn't judge what I was trying to judge. But so when I saw the film for the first time, I was like, obviously this is like amazing. I love this.
Yeah.
After Emma comes back to the mansion and there's that whole sequence where she's meeting the guy she was going to marry, and which he's portrayed as like a really good guy, but I also view the character as like somewhat immoral quite a bit because he's still marrying this like baby in an adult woman's body,
Yeah.
which still irks me a lot. And even how God talks about her at the dinner table and this whole sort of thing.
Well, he said that the only reason why he hasn't had a sexual relationship with her
Yeah.
is because in his words, if he were to orchestrate the physical means for him to have an orgasm because his body's so mutilated,
Yeah.
he would
He
cause an
also-
electrical surge that
He
makes
also
the
says,
town black out.
Yeah. He also says that he has a paternal instinct that's making him unsure about it.
Yeah.
That thing as well. It gets weird. He has a line there where he talks about all sexuality is inherently immoral, basically, is a line that he says. He says, because the guy says that he feels bad about being attracted to her or whatever, and he says, of course you do. All human sexuality, he says, men's, and then he pauses, and then he says, no, all human sexuality is essentially immoral. And the guy says, well, not all of it. But that shows that, like, God, because he's God, has a very dogmatic belief about sexuality. Obviously, it's God. But anyhow, when that ending wraps up, from that point forward, pretty much till the end, but specifically that section, feels a little bit rushed in terms of the development of the characters and how quick they are to sort of forgive each other for certain things. So, like, the marriage just goes ahead, pretty much. They agree. They have that walk in the park scene, and they talk about, like, he doesn't care the fact that she's been, having sex with everybody, whatever. That is more believable than the fact that Bella doesn't care that he knew the whole time that she was a baby in a woman's body. And she's like, you knew and did not tell, and he has this whole thing. And he has a good line which justifies some of it, where he says, Baxter makes one a prisoner to him, talking about God. She would understand that because she's also been a prisoner to him, because she wanted to leave so bad in the beginning, and it makes it somewhat okay. It also makes sense that she wouldn't judge him completely because she's sort of free of judgment and shame, and she would have to forgive him for not telling her, type thing. But they immediately jump into a marriage understanding, and she's like, I love this practical love that we have, or whatever it's called. And it's good, but I just am like, I feel like there should have been some, like, period of not jumping directly into the marriage for whatever reason.
Yeah, right.
It feels a little rushed, that section, to me.
That's fair.
That's all I can really think. And the ending, I feel like, when, that guy who shows up.
Old mate becoming the goat and being absolutely unspeakably, like,
Well, that
evil
whole section feels a little... It's funny to complain in a movie about someone feeling too caricaturish for a movie. And I don't think he is too caricaturish for the movie, but I think it's the brisk pace of that and how that wraps up so definitively and cleanly and in some way too easily for me. I didn't really enjoy when she figures his plan out, and he basically says, you need to drink this martini with chloroform in it so you'll pass out.
So we can remove your clitoris.
Right, yeah.
Which is,
well, it makes,
holy shit.
yeah. It's horrific. But,
Demented,
But once she goes up to him and she's like, here, drink this. And she's expressed to him, like, over and over and over again that she'll not be staying here and she doesn't want to do this, and she'd rather him shoot her and all this sort of stuff. And he just holds this drink out, like, here, and of course she picks it up and throws it in his face. Like, what the fuck what were you expecting? And then he conveniently shoots himself in the foot, and it's like, I get that this is a fairy tale, I get it, but nothing in the movie up until this point has felt this convenient for me.
Right.
Because you'd have to be pretty fucking dumb to be like, here, I know you want to leave, but here's a glass full of chlor.
Yeah.
It's like, of course you would just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
So-
it could also be an indication of how obnoxious he is.
Yeah. It could be an overconfidence thing.
Yeah,
which I
because
think
he
is
also knows, he said something about the fact that all the doors are locked.
Yeah, right.
And, like, everyone's ordered to keep her in there.
Sure.
So I think he just is trying to impose his will on her.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a practical secret that he knows he's going to shoot her.
For sure.
He gets off on knowing that she knows he can shoot her.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I got from that.
Yeah.
But I do agree that there's a few things very late on that might be a little bit rushed.
Yeah, I agree that the best way I can justify it is to say that he's just so overconfident that he believes that he just rules
which
the
is
fucking
very
world.
much in line with his character.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, fair enough.
Yeah. But that's really it. And the fact that the bubbles looked a bit funny. When Defoe does the bubbles.
Oh,
they look like CGI bubbles. And I wish they had, like, done some sort of shot, set it up from a certain angle where he would, like, open his mouth and they would have blown a practical bubble and had it, but, like, whatever. It's like, this is the most nitpicky shit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that ending sequence. Bella going to that mansion to figure out what the hell is up, and because she wants to know her history of when she was Victoria, or she never was Victoria, but what her body is. So of course she goes with him because she's like, I want to know what my history is, because she feels like betrayed because her whole past has been a lie, and she doesn't know. Of course she would go. That makes sense to me completely. She goes there, and one of the things I love about this is that it's like really desaturated, and it's noticeable. It's like for the first time in the movie, like we've had black and white, but this is black and white, but also like desaturation. There's not really much color in this mansion. It's heavily black and white. Bella is dressed in a white wedding dress still with the black hair, so she's black and white. He's black and white. It's reflecting his like worldview. This is like very drab, brown, black, white color palette. The fucking Doberman is black. Everything. Like it's intentionally done with like very little color, and to make it look like a sort of a traditional house or a traditional place. And since we're seeing the film through her point of view, she feels this. She feels like she's going into a place where he abides by traditional dogmatic values. And he even says, which is like the most arrogant shit in the world, he says, Alfie is the character's name. He says, if Jesus knew the ways you'd wrong me, he'd probably beat your head in with a bat. So he like assumes the intent and understanding level of Jesus Christ, which is like really funny. He's like basically saying like, I know what God thinks, and he would think this about you.
And like also like, it's like, I am more forgiving than the embodiment of forgiveness.
Sure.
Like that's a huge thing in Christianity. It's like you can always ask forgiveness no matter what. That's one of the core beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's like, but okay, and now you want to you're so forgiving that you're gonna cut her clitoris off.
Right, yeah.
To punish her.
Yeah. He even tells her, he's like, it's so you won't have any feelings of wanting to go off and be a whore again or whatever it is.
Yeah, jeez.
He's like doing it, he presents it like it's like a favor or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, I'm helping you not give in to this.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
And since we're talking about religion, this is something that in the Middle Eastern world, husbands have
still
been doing. Genital mutilation is a whole issue. And like pouring the acid on the face so that they can't invite romantic attention from other men. It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
Unreal.
When that kicks in, when she learns that, there's this amazing music cue. What I'm assuming is like a bowed double bass, because it's so low. It could be a cello, and it sounds sort of not so smooth when it's being bowed. She like is listening to the doctor guy with the clitoral remover tool, and she looks away, and there's like this cue of this double bass that's insanely good, like really, really fitting and not cheesy, not anything. There's been so much music up until the movie at this point that it fits anyway, but it's very fitting, and it sort of continues through that conversation with Alfie in the room where he's like talking about, she's trying to tell him she's leaving, It's great music.
Yeah, I mean the score's just
the best score of the year for me. I want this to win. It's fucking awesome. I know you like
it's a really great score.
Oppenheimer.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, but this score is so profoundly new when it needs to be, and so amazingly restrained and sincere when it needs to be. Like when Bella walks out to the bridge and has that conversation with God about how horrible what he did by like not telling her what was going on is, and they have that really logical conversation about the whole thing. She's like, I forgive you for this, but not for that, and very like, and the score there is so restrained and so classical. It's like, this could be a score in lots of other different movies. So he just knew when to taper it back and not as well. When to really just go for broke.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's that twang as well that seems to be one of the things where if he's tapering it back, there's like less twang, and then there's more twang. It's like, you know, all those notes.
The composer talked about this thing in an interview where he was like, you hear a lot of notes bend on almost all musical instruments, and he's even saying, as he said, as I'm talking now, you can hear my words bend. Like I'll start a sentence here and it ends up further down in pitch, but it's not like a staccato type note where it's like this note and then this note and this note. It's like a very like bendy thing. I think it was wind instruments, but he wanted to figure out if he could bend them or something like this.
With wind instruments, you kind of have two categories. One is wind that comes from a person, like a flute or a trumpet. Another category is wind that kind of comes artificially. You create a machine that breathes on your behalf, like a pipe organ. And a weird thing you have in common with human wind instruments, like a trumpet or a flute, is they can bend very easily. When you're saying sentences like I am, it's basically lots of individual note pitches, but they kind of go up and down. If you hear a trombone or a saxophone and it bends a bit, that's quite normal. But you'd never really hear it with wind instruments which have artificial breath. They're very straight, like a pipe organ, it's all straight notes, you don't bend it. I started trying to play with what would happen if you started to bend artificial wind, and it's quite unnerving.
So like what he figured out was some combination of combining that with a non-bending note or whatever, so you end up with these like notes, the sound that is very uniquely interesting, which gives this very strange, because you know, we all hear music scores in films even if we don't notice that they kick in at certain points. But if you're listening to them and you've never really heard this sort of change in how an instrument would be used, it's very innovative and very interesting. You hear it, you're like, what is that thing that I'm hearing? That's so cool. Because that's the whole experience of the movie. It's like Bella's like seeing all this shit. She has no idea any of it. She has no place for any of it. So in the same way that she's experiencing something we've never heard, he was like, okay, I got to invent some sounds, or a way at least to use an instrument in a way it hasn't been used, and that'll reflect her opening up to the world and finding all this information out. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It's a incredible score.
Yeah.
I listen to it sometimes in the car.
Yeah.
When I'm driving.
It's so good.
It's really pretty too.
It is.
That's a huge thing that I think is a sign of a great score.
Yeah.
Is like, obviously the score is made to elevate the film.
Sure.
But it really speaks to the music if you can just listen to it on its own and you can still enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely
speaks volumes.
Yeah.
I feel. You know, it's not just like sound effects. You know, I wouldn't listen to a Foley track in a car.
It's true. It's true. I haven't talked about God, which is the main thing I wanted to talk about.
Let's talk about God. We're going to have a brief conversation on God.
I should have mentioned this before, but I can use this to transition into the whole God thing. So you brought up before the Margaret Qualley and how brilliant she is.
Yeah.
But there's this great scene, obviously, it was super memorable for me at least. It's a very simple scene, but Prim, the housekeeper, the old woman, who at the end is throwing the ball back and forth with Margaret.
Yeah.
Bella goes downstairs or whatever, or out to see them before she leaves to go to the bridge. And Margaret Qualley's there, and she's like banging on a steak. And she's like, bang, whore, bang. It's really funny. And Prim says something, she makes some comment to Prim about the fact that she's taught Margaret that to say whore, and that, you know, to judge her, and that's mean or whatever. Prim doesn't seem to have any sort of feeling bad about any of that. She's like, yeah, you're a whore. That's what I'm going to call you, blah, blah, blah. And then she tries to take the steak or whatever it is from under Margaret Qualley, and she gets her hand bashed by the hammer, and it's like a piece of instant karma. It's like, well, you did an asshole thing 2 seconds ago, someone pointed out to you, and then you reap the what you sowed of that the second after by the person who you taught to do it.
Persecute
and
Bella,
it's this idea through the film a lot that these people who have no shame and no judgment, like Bella, like Margaret, that those who are judgmental and seek to shame people for what they do are now the ones being punished by the people who don't have any shame.
Yeah.
And that's like a constant thing that ends up happening. And it relates to this idea of God when he's talking about the fact that all sexuality is immoral and whatever. That's a very like judgmental thing to say, that like all sexuality is inherently an immoral thing. And because he possesses that judgment, it humanizes him because he has like this opinion. Or he has this like he has this
he's not omnipresent.
Yeah, well he's judgmental. Therefore he's like not all forgiving or not all whatever. And that means that God is like hypocritical inherently. And so God in this film is like being portrayed as like a flawed human who's been judged a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe because he's been judged so much, he judges a lot.
Yeah.
Because he was so poorly treated by the Father of God, which is interesting to think about, that he will then go on to judge people the same way for probably the same things that he was shamed for. If you think about being a eunuch, he might feel some sort of moral superiority because he's a eunuch. So he's like, oh, I'm above sex, you know, I'm better than that.
Yeah, so therefore it's immoral.
Sure, or maybe he's had to convince himself to believe that because his father made him a eunuch. It's interesting to think about why he's judgmental.
He has that one comment he says where I think his assistant, I believe the actor's name is Rami Youssef. It just came to me. He's asking him, he says, do you believe that this is fair? Do you think what you're doing is responsible?
Yeah.
And he said, do you think it was fair when my father branded my genitals for 5 hours in the name of science? And he said, no, but my father was a man of science. And he said, and I am doing what I am in the name of science.
Right.
Which is unreal.
Yeah.
That, you know, the event on the topic of cruelty that he uses to justify his cruelty is him getting freaking branded on the genitals by a hot iron.
Yeah, well, it's science.
Yeah, and so it's like it's like this is cruel, but it's science.
It's in the
so
name
if
of
that's
science.
cruel and it's science, then this is okay.
He justifies not reviving Victoria the same way when she jumps from the bridge.
Yeah.
And he says something like, you know, I knew nothing of the life she abandoned other than she has chosen not to be. How would she feel on being dragged from her carefully chosen blank eternity? If we're in this Christian nation, suicide is treated as lunacy or crime. So he said, who was I to decide her fate? Which is interesting because like
he still decides it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he's viewing her fate as being put in a loony bin as worse than death. And he's making that decision for her.
Yeah.
And I guess his justification is, well, she's made that decision. But at the end of the day, he's still making the decision.
Yeah.
And then he goes on immediately after that to say, it was also a brilliant scientific opportunity for me to, like, the peak of my research.
Yeah.
So you have to wonder if, like, he's just made that decision because it allows him to do his amazing science that he wants to be able to do.
Yeah.
So he's, like, retroactively justifying which one of, because you can choose either narrative, right? It's like, fine, respect her decision to kill herself, or bring her back to life because that's the right thing to do. Well, which one of these fits into my pre-existing thing that I would love to be able to do? That one. So I'll just pretend that that's the correct way to treat this scenario and run with that.
Interesting characters always have at least like 2 reasons for doing something.
Sure.
And one of them is how they justify to themselves that it's the right thing. And then the second one is what serves their own personal interest.
Yes.
And then they usually go through with it if both of them align.
Sure. But he's also retroactively justifying his decision. He's
Yeah.
basically saying, I want to do this thing, so I'm going to choose the line of logic that allows me to do it, as opposed to entertaining the other line of logic that doesn't.
Of course. Yeah.
So he makes a decision to stick with a certain sort of moral truth,
Yeah.
which we can talk about in Anatomy of a Fall as well. I like that when he is dying and he says to Emma, my father always said, carve with compassion or something like this.
He was a
fucking idiot, but it's not bad advice. and it's great because, first of all, the off-screen characters, which is, you know, of his father, has been brought up for like 2 seconds, has more depth than most characters in most movies. Just from that line alone, almost. But also, it tells you that his father didn't know what he was doing, and he knows that. And his father's made his life a misery. He's not been able to live a normal life because of this horrible torture that he's endured. And at the end, when he's like dying, he says, all my life, people's eyes looked at me with horror and pity, but you, and he looks at Bella, and he says, well, it's all very interesting what is happening. So I'm breaking that down to 2 things and saying that the first section is like, he's effectively created someone who's able to validate his experience in life.
Yeah, wow.
Which is interesting because
and then
if he hadn't...
Sheltering her helps that.
Right.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't had created her, he never would have been able to feel better about his life. Because he's created somebody unintentionally, without any shame or judgment, or somebody completely free of like any sort of dogmatic belief. No, she hasn't been religiously educated, nothing, 0. Or even like societally educated. She thinks it's perfectly acceptable to do things at the dinner table at the beginning of the film and whatnot.
Right.
She doesn't care, you know. She's 0, nothing. This polite society's like a joke.
Yeah.
So
she has that thing about sex after she has it with Mark Ruffalo where she says, I don't understand why people don't just do this all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He now feels justified by this woman for the first time in his life, or by anybody. She's the first person ever who's a functioning human being, arguably, now. More functioning than some of the human beings I've met. But but like, you know, she's intelligent. She's read all this philosophy stuff. Effectively, she's human, just as human as anybody else. And she's free of judgment.
Yep.
And so he feels okay. And then his second part where he says, it's all very interesting what is happening, is super interesting and a brilliant line because he's saying it like as he's dying. And you know, people have those stories of like while they're dying, they see things in you know, whatever, whatever you believe, whether it's just, as some people believe, it's like some DMT type chemical that makes you trip out while you die, or people want to believe, whatever the hell you believe. Basically what we're witnessing here, if you want to take the movie as a fairy tale and an allegory, is you're watching God die.
Yeah.
And God says, oh, it's very interesting what's happening. So he's experiencing death. So God doesn't know what it's like to die.
That's
and
interesting.
God doesn't know what's happening as he's dying. It's just interesting to him.
Yeah.
He's not scared of death. He's not welcomed death. He's just going to die.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what's beyond. So it's this idea that like God is just as clueless as everybody else as to what happens after you die.
He's retreating to his analytical views that have protected him all his life.
Sure.
Because if he was more emotional than he was analytical,
right,
and he didn't go into science after being mutilated and being able to look at things in this way, he would be a shell of a human and just a deformed person. That's so indicative of who he is as a character. To say something analytical instead of, well, obviously it's still emotional, but it's more analytical than emotional in your final moment.
Well, he's just interested. And it just shows you that like and he's not, his whole reflection about everything he's done to the movie up until this point, he's not a bad guy. And he's not a good guy either. He's like a human guy. He's like human. Which is very interesting that like in Yorgo's reflection of the world and the screenwriter's reflection of the world, that God is effectively human. And he's not, wiser or less wise than anybody. If God's ideas are coming from a book, and depending on what you believe, somebody had to write the book, and then how did those people or that God who wrote the book came to his realizations about things? Well, did he have problems? Did he experience things and do bad things and learn, the whole, you know what I mean? So it's just interesting to put that idea at the end of your movie, I think, because it opens up this huge thing. When I heard that line in the movie, I was just like, holy shit, like this movie's gonna live forever for just opening those ideas up. It's great because that's all the best films do that. There's no answers. There's just questions.
Open the door at the end.
Just questions. Sure. I love it. I also love this little line where when Christopher Abbott marches into the church and he gives this huge monologue about the fact, like, what's happened and who Victoria is and all that sort of stuff. Willem Dafoe, as God, looks at him because he doesn't know what's happening and goes, God.
Oh, that's...
There's an exclamation.
I forgot about that,
It's great, God's like appealing.
He's saying his own name
God's
in vain.
appealing to God.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow.
So what's going on? It's great.
That is really funny. I totally forgot about that line.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I'm pretty much done.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to bring up was the actual delivery of this, like the stylistic choice of, because it's worth saying, I mean, if people have seen Yorgo movies, they know
he's not afraid of a wide lens.
Well, that too. What I mean is his performance choices and linguistic choices of actors. Because everybody in this movie, they pretty much just say what they feel all the time. Pretty much. And it's all very like logically consistent the whole way. Like normally where you'd have somebody protect what they're saying or not protect, everybody in this movie just outs everything that they are feeling and saying all the time. And it's consistent with...
And he's been that way all the way back to Dogtooth.
It's consistent with all of Yorgo. So even in The Lobster, there's dialogue that's similar where like everybody in The Lobster is judging. I'm not going to spoil... People know the premise of The Lobster. But like, you remember that scene where Colin Farrell checks in to that the hotel? She's like, "What animal do you want to be?" And he's like, "This or whatever." And she's like, "What sexuality are you?" He thinks about it for a minute, and then he says that like gay experience he had in college. And he's like, "Can I put bisexual?" And she's like, "No, it has to be straight or gay." And it's this like very judgmental, dogmatic belief system, which is the same thing that this movie is tearing down, right? So Yorgo is very interested, obviously, in beliefs and God as a whole and what God means. Sacred deer, same thing. Karmic, sort of like, you did this to me, the balance of the universe is that this must happen to you. It's this trade-off about dogma that comes up all the time in Yorgo's works. But the delivery that everybody delivers it with, somebody in an interview once said to him that it was like monotone. And he was like, it's not monotone.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no, it isn't. It isn't monotone.
There was no memo that went out that told us to speak in a staccato or monotonous tone. I think the work is so strong on the page as it defies your complete possession because it is such an extraordinarily violently atypical behavior that you're watching. It renders you powerless. You have no experience to draw from.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's very expressive. Like, you can't argue that his films don't have expressive performances in them. It's just the way in which the actors are saying things. And he said things like he doesn't believe in trying to imitate realism because he doesn't think that, like, realism exists.
I definitely don't strive for realism because I don't believe in it, and I don't believe in it exists in cinema. All of it is a construction, so it's just there are different approaches.
So he just forgo it completely. And he's just told his actors all the time to basically stop doing the acting. Like Barry Keoghan apparently was having trouble with, I think it was the scene where he talks about Colin Farrell, he wants to see his chest hair, and then he says it to, like, my mum would like you and you'd get along, and he couldn't, the scene wasn't working or whatever. And Yorgo just said, just stop acting. Just don't do any, just say the words, don't do any acting. And that's what the sort of feeling behind it was, is just, we're not going to act, we're just going to say the words. And the words are written in such a way where if you said them in a normal, realistic voice, the dialogue wouldn't work, because it's not compatible with, like, realism. Like, everything's logical, they speak like this, they talk like... And that sort of stylistic choice in terms of how to deliver something, it fits into Poor Things very much, but it fits into this, like, Victorian sort of period piece type thing in such a way where, since people used more traditional language back then, it, like, makes it more disguised in a film like this, which I think is why it's been more accessible to people than, like, Sacred Deer, which is just, like, present day. So I think people watch that movie and will get turned off because it's like, oh, they're talking like...
They're talking like, why?
Yeah.
Why are they talking like
why are they
this?
talking like this when, you know, but it's more disguised here and in The Favourite as well, because that's similar to how people talked back then. But I think it's this idea that, like, Bresson uses in his movies.
Cette froideur qu'on m'a reproché bien arbitrairement, j'ai vu des gens extrêmement émus à mes films, et je crois que, en effet, ce n'est pas en essayant de copier la vie, de la copier à travers des acteurs, à travers un jeu, une mimique d'acteurs, qu'on arrivera à une émotion.
They're not disguising the fact that people are acting. It's like, this is acting, this is a film, this isn't real. We're not going to pretend like it's realism. That's out the door. We don't care if this is realism. It makes you pay attention and focus on the language and the ideas.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody imitating a feeling that might be close to those ideas. So it's really...
You can easily write it off as they're imitating realism, and then that's the end of it.
Right, that's it. And people might not think much about what's being said. But if you deliver it like this, you end up with a film that puts all of the focus on the assembly of the film in a sort of strangely analytical way. And it's so fantastic that even through that, the film's become an incredibly emotional experience.
Yeah.
Like, I've shown Sacred Deer to a few people, and by the end of it, like, I never want to see that again. And sometimes I'll ask the question, like, because they will say in the first 10 minutes, if they've never seen a yoga, why are they all talking like robots or something like this? And it's like, well, it's interesting that through a consistent tone, a consistent language-based thing, a emotion will emerge. People just forget about it. They're just like, oh, you know, this is the style of the movie, whatever. And it's still incredibly emotional, which sort of shows you that you don't need realism. You don't need realism. You don't have to focus on realism in order to produce something that's, like, very emotionally impactful. And also that makes everybody really focus on the dialogue that's being said. It's brilliant. Yeah. I love it. And I know that Yorgo has said everything that he loves Bresson and all that sort of stuff. So I know that maybe I feel like that's maybe where he developed it from a little bit.
Bresson, one of my favorite filmmakers ever. The most moving film I've ever seen. I'm ashamed to say, but I cry most of the times that I watch a Bresson film.
It's my favorite one.
But there you go.
That's really interesting. No, well, I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. He's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
What a great movie.
Very excited for the next Emma Stone and Yorgo collaboration.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome.
I hope they make 30 more films.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see tons of these.
Yeah.
It just takes him forever to go. He said this screenplay took like 8 years.
Yeah, wow.
So,
I mean, fair enough for this one.
It just takes him forever to do it, but, you know, whatever. It's fine. He works on multiple things at the same time as well, so.
Yeah, I think, well, you know what's really fortunate too with Emma is that Emma in her early career was in a lot of rom-coms.
True.
And drew a massive...
And straight up comedies too.
Yeah, 100%. Which is also, like, shout out Easy A, what a film.
Yeah.
I love Easy A.
Yeah.
She's garnered, and obviously she's Gwen Stacy in
Yeah.
Spider-Man. She's
Yeah,
garnered
yeah.
this massive mainstream audience.
Yeah.
And now, because she's the kind of actress that she is, she's so skilled and open-minded, and she can clearly play lots of different things.
Sure, yeah.
She can star in a Yorgos film and help produce it.
Yeah.
And films like that don't struggle to get funding, and they can economically build a huge set in a soundstage, and they can facilitate that.
As soon as Emma Stone was the lead, they were like, you do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's like, and you can make her face the poster, and it's like, well, yeah, we all love Emma Stone. We recognize her. We're going to go see the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now Yorgo has all these tools at his disposal, and Emma gets to act in more films like Birdman and The Favourite and Poor Things.
She said in a press conference thing where she was like, weren't you like scared to do this role because it's like so whatever, and her response to the question was something like, what scares me now is like not choosing something that's like really challenging and weird, which is like great. I love to see these like mainstream actors go like, we're gonna just do weird shit from now on permanently, and like
because she also did The Curse.
Yeah.
With the Safdie and
Nathan.
Fielder.
Yeah.
And I'm only 3 episodes in.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh yeah, it's weird again,
yeah,
but
awesome.
like amazing.
Yeah.
She's just really damn good.
Yeah. I heard Yorgo say in an interview at one point, like, why did he choose Emma, or why did he want Emma to be in whatever? And he said she has this speech impediment. And it's basically what he said. And he was,
I think she just won the Oscar for La La Land, and she'd done a lot of American comedies like Easy A and things like that. What was it that clicked with her?
We'll speak like you're not here. I didn't think of her for The Lobster as well. She has this this wonderful speech impediment, which feels like a lisp. In the world of The Lobster, that would be a very particular characteristic. She could be the lisping woman. I wanted her for another part. So I said, like, well, this is not going to work, so let's just have to figure out something else. I was, thinking of her since then. Yeah. I mean, I was right.
the speech impediment. And it was funny that, and she was in the audience while he was saying this, which was quite funny.
Yeah.
But it's just funny that was like the thing that sold it. But it's also the case, like, there are certain people like Emma Stone who are sort of irreplaceable. There's not really any other actors who aren't like Emma Stone, I don't think. Personally. I think she delivers something that's unique.
100%.
But it's just funny that he said that. And I was like, that's funny because I made similar casting decisions based on nothing more than just like, oh, they're kind of weird.
Yeah.
They're just like, they talk a certain way. That's good enough.
Yeah.
Because it's like that sort of uniqueness, I guess, is like irreplaceable. And he knows it as well. So
inherently, when you're casting as well, you have to make a long-term commitment on not knowing someone very well.
True.
So like the reasons become a little weird.
Yeah,
because you're pulling it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You don't know this person for 5 years.
You can watch all the press you want and all the movies you
exactly.
want, but until you're in a room with somebody talking to somebody, that's when you finally
It's
realize,
different. And especially after
years.
years too, because you can talk with someone one-on-one in private.
Sure.
And after 3 to 6 months, maybe they will introduce themselves to you.
Sure, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
also, working on a film is different too, because it's high pressure.
100%.
So people act differently.
And you have the schedule, and it's crazy. One thing, I mentioned the poster.
Mm-hmm.
I need this poster in my room. I need it somewhere. The one of her with her. There's two. There's the beautiful one where it's a mid shot.
Yeah.
And then out of her dress, there's like a flowing. It looks
it's
like
a
flowing
grand opening
river
for like a gate or something.
Yeah,
and all
the characters are there. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
The second one,
My
which I
favorite
also
one.
need, is this one with the makeup.
Oh, that one.
Well, yeah, the close-up one.
Oh, I like the I think it was the teaser, where she's like her body is in her body. which is like little Emma Stone in a giant
Oh,
body of Emma
okay.
Stone in a dress.
Cut that in.
That's my
I
favorite
haven't
poster
seen
for
it.
this. Oh, that one's
I
so
haven't
good.
yeah.
That's that. Yeah.
There was the one that I really like. Well, Calvin sent me a video breaking it down because I didn't even notice this.
The makeup, yeah.
The makeup.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is perfect, like for her character, like she's like drawing on her face, blah blah blah, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And then Calvin was like, hey, have you had a good look at this poster? And I went, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he was like, Godwin is on her eyebrow.
Yeah.
Ruffalo's over here,
Yeah, yeah.
and like someone's on her lips, and
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like a whole art piece
Yeah.
within a poster.
Yeah.
It's so clever.
Yeah, they all are.
Yeah.
All of the marketing for this movie is
Yeah, and it's
phenomenal.
also excellent marketing because
Yeah.
it's like, yes, your biggest thing, your motor with this film for
Yeah.
the general audience is Emma Stone's face.
Yes.
So we're gonna.
So put it on
So it's
every
like
poster.
make that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but this is a Yorgos Lanthimos movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do we? And then you do things like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mess it up. And it's just that's one of the most perfect posters to promote a film I've ever seen.
Yep.
It serves every
Yep.
purpose.
And they're beautiful art pieces on their own.
Yeah.
Which is the hardest thing to do with a poster is like, how do we make this look? Because like there's movie posters, like the stuff for Brazil is like some of my
Oh,
favorite poster
yeah.
work I've ever seen. But like there's Terry Gilliam's stuff's great and perfect for like sort of poster art.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to make posters that aren't just like, because you know it's good things should really sell themselves, and you shouldn't have to like a good product should be what it is. You know what I mean? And you shouldn't have to push it with some stupid bullshit. But if you can
Yeah.
push it with something really artistic, then it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the whole world isn't a village,
It's
and
true.
like word of mouth doesn't.
Doesn't carry.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
anyhow, this is a really artistic way to do marketing.
it's
That's
just brilliant,
gorgeous.
and it just speaks volumes to the film
Yeah.
too.
I definitely
perfect.
didn't go to a theater and take like a fair few of those little handout posters that are like in the flyers.
Oh
near the
yeah,
door.
these
yeah,
ones.
Yeah, I definitely didn't do that.
Yeah.
One per person. Anyhow.
I think
I'm done.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
yeah,
you good?
I like
Okay,
it. That's cool.
Yeah, that's enough.
Speaking of speaking logically,
Yeah.
I am done.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode. This has been Poor Things. What's interesting is when you're promoting something or talking about something, usually at the end, if you like I see on press runs, it's like, oh, do you want to pitch your film? Like at the end of Hot Ones, they're always like, you have 1 minute to pitch your film after they eat the hottest wing.
Yeah.
So you would have started listening to this podcast episode if you've seen Poor Things.
True.
I'm here to pitch to you to go watch it again. That's what I'm going to do because
Okay.
I'm going to go do the same.
Yeah.
Every film we're going to talk about today or in the subsequent episodes.
Yeah, also, this will be out first, so like if you haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall or The Zone of Interest, and you don't want to be spoiled when we speak about them in the future, go watch those movies.
They're both out at
fantastic.
cinemas right now.
Yeah, and they're both very much
Anatomy
worth
of
your
a
time.
Fall is on Amazon Prime.
There you go.
So if you can't get to a cinema, watch it on Amazon Prime.
Perfect.
Go watch those films because that's what we're going to release next. And you don't want these films spoiled for you.
No. Whatever we have to say about these films is not worth being spoiled over, so just watch the movies first.
Yeah, right.
Pretty much.
Yeah, the film is greater than what we have to say.
Yeah,
for sure. Alrighty, well, thank you very much for listening and have a good one. See you soon.
Yeah, we should say like, you know, be good YouTube people.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yep.
We got trailers out for movies. Go watch
Yes, co-stars. We have a feature film and a short film.
Yep.
And we don't know yet, but who knows? Maybe you'll see it in some film festivals.
Yeah. Subscribe, turn your notifications on, like the video, leave a comment telling us what you thought, even if it's, you know, even if you don't agree. We'll discuss in the comment section.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're on Spotify too, if that's where you're listening.
Yeah, aren't we everywhere?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're everywhere. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Have a good one, guys. See ya.
See ya.